Hi. Have you ever thought that the world is a pretty messed up place? I mean, did you hear about the most recent insert political, economic, social, or environmental disaster here? Well, an early group of Christians had a story to tell of how it got that way. But then the early church burned all of their stuff because they didn't like it, and their story was lost. Until a whole bunch of their stuff was found in a garbage dump. These group of Christians were anything but consistent, but with a little bit of speculation, we can finally tell their story. In the beginning, there was only God, the One, the Father, or the Monad. From this monad, several other entities called aeons emanated or flowed from the monad. From these various aeons, they emanated further aeons in pairs, with each generation of pairs getting progressively lesser in power. But this is what it would look like from the inside. From the outside perspective, all of these aeons would be one collective, which we call the Pleroma. Everything beyond the Pleroma is chaos, or the Kenoma. But everything went wrong one day when one of the aeons, Sophia, or the Wisdom, makes a mistake. For whatever reason, Sophia fails to successfully emanate her own child. Either she doesn't have a partner, or tries to have a child without her partner. Regardless of the reason, this attempted virgin birth ends with the monster, Yaldabaoth. Sophia tries to hide this creation by throwing it into the Pleroma. Yaldabaoth then finds itself alone in the chaotic nothingness, and seemingly all-powerful. Because of its nature being born from the Pleroma and out of spite, Yaldabaoth emanates its own children in an attempt to create its own Pleroma, but its creations are twisted and broken, the most important of its children being Sabaoth, and the various evil angels called the Archons. Unlike the Pleroma, which is infinite and perfect, this false Pleroma of Yaldabaoth was bound by his arbitrary rules. Yaldabaoth creates a shadowy veil, and from it explodes the concepts like matter, space, time, etc., creating the material universe. Content with its creation, Yaldabaoth declares itself to be the one and only God. Sophia hears this, and tells it that it's not the only God, and gives it the title of Samael, God of the Blind, or Saklas, the Fool. Yaldabaoth is angered by this and attacks the Pleroma. The Archons take some of the divine energy from the Pleroma. How they do so is inconsistent among the various Gnostic myths. With all this divine energy, Yaldabaoth and the Archons trap this energy in the false Pleroma of the material universe. Realizing that Yaldabaoth is a monster and must be stopped, Sophia repents for what she did and leaves the Pleroma to try and talk some sense into her creation. But Yaldabaoth has serious mom issues and traps Sophia, or parts of Sophia, or Sophia goes willingly, or Sophia tricks Yaldabaoth into breathing his divinity into the world. To be honest, the Gnostics never really agreed on this part of the story. But somehow Sophia enters the physical world as well. Within the Pleroma, the Christ, another aeon, decides to help Sophia, as well as many of Yaldabaoth's creations as possible, and sends a part of himself into the material universe. And thus begins the wacky adventures of Yaldabaoth trying to keep the divinity trapped in the material universe. Within the universe Yaldabaoth is created. He gawks at his newest creation, the primordial human, Adam Kadmon, who has a divine spark within it. This primordial human being, having a divine spark, wants to emanate its own creation, like Sophia and Yaldabaoth before it. But Yaldabaoth won't let it, and splits it into two parts, the male Adam and the female Eve. Rather than torture them, Yaldabaoth decides to give these two a prison so nice that they'll never want to leave. For as long as the two of them live in ignorance, the divine spark within them will never escape the material world. But there's just one problem. A tree sprouts from the ground, and in this tree, it contains the fruits of the knowledge of good and evil, which is planted by the Pleroma. If Adam and Eve eat from this tree, they'll know that Yaldabaoth is evil. So Yaldabaoth tells them not to eat from this tree, or they'll die. At first, Adam and Eve listen to Yaldabaoth, but one day, the spirit of Sophia speaks to Eve through a snake in the garden, and tells her that Yaldabaoth is lying, and if she eats the fruit, she and Adam won't die, but will instead know that Yaldabaoth is evil. Eve eats the fruit, and then has Adam eat the fruit. And just as the snake told them, Adam and Eve don't die, but instead receive knowledge. The two of them now know that Yaldabaoth is evil, and that their garden is a prison, and that they're naked. The two hide, but Yaldabaoth comes looking for them. Because Yaldabaoth is not all-knowing and all-powerful, he calls out to Adam asking where he is. Adam immediately confesses to eating the fruit and blames Eve, throwing her under the bus. Eve then tries to escape out of the material universe and back to the Pleroma, but Yaldabaoth has his Archons stop her. Eve is then raped by the Archons for her insolence. Yaldabaoth curses women for all time to be subservient to men, and kicks the two of them out of the garden. It is then revealed that Eve was impregnated by one of the Archons, and gives birth to her son Cain. Later, she and Adam have a son named Abel. Knowing that if they defy Yaldabaoth, bad things will happen to them, the family of Adam decide to play along with Yaldabaoth's god complex and worship him. In order to try and appease Yaldabaoth, the family placates him by offering sacrifices. This pleases Yaldabaoth for now, and Cain and Abel are able to grow up into adulthood. Cain becomes a farmer of wheat, and Abel raises livestock. One day, when Cain and Abel present their offerings to Yaldabaoth, Yaldabaoth blesses Abel's sacrifice, but not Cain's. Cain is naturally upset by this, and Yaldabaoth explains that Cain offered plants to be burned as a sacrifice, whereas Abel offered a goat. To Yaldabaoth, wheat isn't a proper sacrifice, because it doesn't suffer before dying. This gives Cain an idea, and he murders his brother. Yaldabaoth finds this event hilarious, and gives Cain a special mark that will curse anyone who tries to attack him. Adam and Eve are appalled by this, and kick Cain out of their family. So Adam and Eve try again to multiply, and have 2 children this time, a son named Seth and a daughter named Norea. The Gnostics were horribly inconsistent about Norea's character from this point on in the story. In most versions, she populates the earth with Seth, but in a lot of Gnostic texts it implies or outright states that she remains a virgin and goes off and does her own thing. Either way, at some point she learns that she is an aspect of Sophia and therefore greater than Yaldabaoth, and disappears from the story of Genesis until the flood. Regardless, the line of Seth populates the earth with humanity. And it's here where we have to speculate a lot, because a lot of Gnostic texts reference the events of the Book of Enoch and the sons of God from Genesis, but to our current understanding, there is no surviving direct Gnostic interpretations from the time of Enoch beyond the general events of the Watchers and the Flood. But that doesn't mean we can't connect the dots and try and make it work. Also, it's funnier that way. So the line of Seth have done a good job populating, and peace reigns on the planet. But Yaldabaoth isn't pleased by this and sends a group of his Archons called the Watchers to Earth to cause mischief. While on Earth, the Archons get really horny and decide to mate with human women. Yaldabaoth allows this because he finds it hilarious, and it worked so well with Cain the last time. The offspring of this union are the nephilim, who are giants. At first, the nephilim eat all of the livestock of humanity, and then they start eating people. Meanwhile, the Archons decide to spread chaos into human civilization, and teach humans concepts like magic, weapons, and greed. This basically leads into an all-out war as humans begin killing each other en masse. Yaldabaoth gets a good chuckle at this. Meanwhile, 4 lesser aeons, or possibly Archons who switch sides — the Gnostics were incredibly inconsistent with their angelology. Anyway, these 4 angels ask Christ if they can go help humanity. Christ gives these 4 angels a rescue mission. These 4 angels are Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and in the original Enoch, the 4th is Uriel, but in the Gnostic text, this role seems to go to an angel called Alelith. The 4 angels then go to Earth to kick butt. Raphael and Michael take on the Watchers, Gabriel fights the Nephilim, and Alelith stays on standby because Norea is hiding somewhere, and he helps her later. As the Archons and the Nephilim are getting destroyed by the angels, Yaldabaoth rage quits, and decides to destroy everyone in a great flood. But not wanting to give up on his playthings, Yaldabaoth finds one of the few people on Earth who hasn't been affected by this calamity, named Noah, and commands him to build an ark for him and his family, and to put 2 of each animal on the ark so that they can repopulate the Earth. As he's building the ark, Noah is approached by Norea, who has learned that Yaldabaoth plans to destroy everything in a flood, and asks to board Noah's ark. Noah tells her no, so Norea breathes fire and destroys the ark. This alerts Yaldabaoth to her presence, and he sends more of his Archons to try and stop her. The Archons threaten to do to her what they did to Eve, but Norea uses her fire breath to fight back. Norea is then joined by Alelith, and the 2 of them scare the Archons away. Then Alelith carries Norea out of the earth back to the Pleroma. While on the way, Alelith explains to Norea the entire cosmology of the universe, from the fall of Sophia to their predicament right now. The reason Norea is able to leave Earth with Alelith is because she has attained Gnosis, meaning that she can now ascend to the Pleroma. Once Alelith and Norea return to the Pleroma, Norea becomes one with it and reassumes her role as an aspect of Sophia. One of Yaldabaoth's Archons, Sabaoth, sees this and realizes that Yaldabaoth has been lying about being the only god this whole time, so he repents and apologizes. Norea/Sophia forgive him, and Sabaoth is given the throne of the 7th heaven to rule over. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the Watchers are bound and thrown into a pit, and the Nephilim are dead. But because the Nephilim are half divine, their spirits still exist as demons who wander the Earth. Noah finishes rebuilding the Ark, and Yaldabaoth, in a seething rage, floods the Earth, killing everyone else. The Earth then floods for 40 days and 40 nights, and Noah and those aboard the Ark survive, ending up on top of a mountain. Yaldabaoth then basically calls for what I could best call a peace treaty between it and the Pleroma. Yaldabaoth won't flood the Earth again as long as the Pleroma doesn't invade again. With this promise or covenant, Yaldabaoth and the Pleroma are stuck at a standstill. Yaldabaoth still has billions of souls worth of divine essence trapped in ignorance. These souls need to have a mind to understand that they're trapped, meaning the souls must be in a human body before they can achieve Gnosis and escape like Norea did. But Yaldabaoth also needs these souls to have a body, so it has something to mess with. If the Pleroma simply sends an army to attack Yaldabaoth, well, then he'll kill everyone, leaving these souls trapped in the realm of matter, unable to escape. But Yaldabaoth won't have anything to mess with, so both sides will lose. With this plan of mutually assured destruction, Yaldabaoth simply waits as Noah and his family repopulate the earth. So at this point, the descendants of Noah were completely loyal to Yaldabaoth and repopulate the earth, living in total servitude to him. No, just kidding, they immediately try to build a tower to try and kill him. Yaldabaoth gets mad at this and curses them, confusing their language, and then destroys their tower, scattering them to the world. From here, the people split into various nations. But Yaldabaoth gets bored simply watching and decides to once again mess with humanity. So Yaldabaoth goes to a guy named Abram, later renamed to Abraham, and tells him to go to Canaan because Abraham is going to be the progenitor of Yaldabaoth's chosen people. But various shenanigans take place with Abraham's slave and her pregnancy, and Abraham's family drama is boring. So Yaldabaoth decides to let out some of his bloodlust while waiting for that drama to subside, and what better target for his wrath than the city of Sodom? The problem is that Abraham's nephew, Lot, lives in Sodom. So Abraham pleads with Yaldabaoth to spare the city. Abraham proposes that if there are 50 good people in the city, that it should be spared. Yaldabaoth agrees to this proposal, and then Abraham proceeds to haggle with Yaldabaoth the number down from 50 to 10. Yaldabaoth sends 2 of his archons to go get Lot and judge the city. While there, a gang of thugs try to rape the archons, and the archons blind them. Yaldabaoth then destroys the city. He also kills Lot's wife by turning into her pillar of salt for disobeying him. After Abraham's family drama was over, he and his wife have a son named Isaac. Isaac becomes Abraham's greatest joy in life, so much so that Yaldabaoth gets jealous and tells Abraham to sacrifice his son as a test of loyalty. Abraham has no choice and agrees. He takes his son to the top of a mountain, and just as he's about to stab his son to death, an archon appears before him, telling him that he's passed Yaldabaoth's test. For doing this, Yaldabaoth gives Abraham a blessing, promising that one day his descendants will rule the world. Isaac grows up and has 2 sons of his own, Jacob and Esau. Isaac decides to transfer the blessing of Yaldabaoth to Esau, but is tricked by Jacob into giving it to him instead. Yaldabaoth finds this act of deception interesting and allows Jacob to carry on this blessing. But first, Yaldabaoth sends an archon to fight Jacob to prove his worth. Jacob wins and is given the name Israel. Israel would have several sons, but his favorite was Joseph. Yaldabaoth hatches a scheme that he wants to pull off in Egypt. So it gives Joseph a dream in which Joseph rules over his brothers. Joseph tells his brothers, and of course, they're angry at him and sell him into slavers heading for Egypt. While in Egypt, Joseph gets #MeToo'd and thrown in prison. While there, he gets the power to interpret dreams and interprets the dream of other prisoners. The Pharaoh is given a strange dream by Yaldabaoth and has Joseph interpret it for him. There is going to be 7 years of good times and 7 years of famine that will soon follow. Joseph is then put in charge of preparing Egypt for this famine. As predicted, the famine is horrible, but Egypt is fine. Israel sends his sons to Egypt for food, and after various shenanigans, Joseph forgives his family, and Israel and all of his family are then invited to stay in Egypt. And from there, the sons of Israel would be fruitful and spread all throughout the land of Egypt, and they all lived happily ever after. That is, of course, until Yaldabaoth put his plan for Egypt into action. Tune in next time for the wacky adventures of Yaldabaoth and Moses.